Okay, Mary, the meeting is yours.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order of the White Lake Township Planning Commission on December 17th at 7:01 p.m. Rhonda, will you help me with the, you moved around there, help me with the attendance roll.
Sure. Peter Maher.
Here.
Rhonda Grubb. Here. Mary Carlock.
Here.
Joseph Seward.
Was here. He's muted.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I'm here.
Matt Slicker.
I'm here.
Debbie DeHart.
Here.
Steve Anderson.
Here.
And I think that's it.
All right, I will get the Pledge of Allegiance going. If we can have a flag up by our,
Where's the flag?
there it is. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of
of
America,
America,
and to the
republic
for which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
for all.
for all. Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Steve and Pete is the second. I guess we have to have a roll call, Wanda, so we're gonna keep you busy.
A roll call for
The
what?
agenda.
The
Yeah, I
agenda?
guess we're supposed to have all roll calls online.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I don't know that you have to anymore.
Oh, we don't?
I think that's
Okay.
been clarified, but
Yay.
yeah, at
Okay.
least for township board meetings, I don't believe it's necessary. So I
All
would say
right,
we don't
because I
have
was
to
told
either.
once we had
Right.
to do roll call.
It
All
was
right,
that case previous, or the case previously. Yeah.
all right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, motion passes. The next thing is the approval of the minutes from September 3rd.
Yep.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you,
I'll
Pete.
support.
Hi, Debbie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, the next thing is the call to the public. Is there is there anybody online waiting to speak?
There are no members of the public here tonight, or at least not
Okay,
yet.
Mary, I received a correspondence which actually pertains to the ordinance amendment, so I can
okay,
make mention of that when we get down to that point. So I just wanted
okay,
to mention
which is gonna be
that.
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So the next thing we don't have a public hearing or any old business, so we're gonna go directly to 8, new business for the zoning ordinance amendments. So I'll give the floor to Sean here.
Thank you. Generally, I have a memo, and I apologize. This is a kind of an odd, just for everybody who was not here at the beginning or is joining us, Matt, or who's joining us on YouTube. Generally, ordinance amendments begin, and over a period of a handful of months, we kind of work through them, accept public comment, and then send a recommendation off to the township board. We started these about a year ago, if you remember, and then things sort of shut down as we really started to get cooking with some of these drafts. And we had talked back in the spring about just waiting till we were back in person to really get together and go over these, because it seemed like it might be easier. And that obviously has not happened and is not going to happen probably at least for the next couple of months. So rather than letting these just kind of languish out there, it seemed to be appropriate to just move them along. As you've read through these, you'll see a good number of them are housekeeping. A couple of them are fairly substantive, though, and will involve quite a bit of discussion tonight. So I usually have a memo that accompanies this, and I think I probably sent that memo a year ago when we first kicked this off. But not a whole lot has changed since then, with the exception of the home occupation for medical marijuana that we'll probably spend a good deal of time on tonight. So if you have questions just about kind of the process, I'd be happy to answer them, or we can move right into it. But the plan at this point is to go through these tonight, make any final changes you'd like to see made based on our discussion, and then hold a public hearing at our next scheduled meeting, which I know you haven't approved the meeting schedule yet for 2021, but that would be January 7th. in hopes that if we moved it along, the township board would be able to have its first reading of these amendments in January and then adopt them at their second reading in February, so they could become effective. So for those who were not on earlier, Chris Madigan, who is in one of your boxes on your screen, is with McKenna and Associates and has assisted us through this process. Jason Hudson, for those of you who don't know him, he was an attendee at previous planning commission meetings. He's our ordinance officer. You guys know Justin. And I think I've covered everybody that will participate in the discussion tonight. But we've all kind of maybe focused more on certain areas than others, so we may all participate at some point from the staff side of things in the discussion as you guys would like us to. So we kind of have this broken into like the big batch of ordinances with kind of 4.1, which is a marijuana change separate. That's a kind of a it came to you later because it was being worked on by the attorneys and it's in a separate hyperlink, but we can certainly go through that whenever you'd like when we get to that point in the list of amendments, we can get right into that. And you'll also see a letter from the township attorney that was emailed out to you guys today and posted today as well, kind of explaining why we're doing this, just so that there was a little bit of background for both you guys at the PC and also for the township board when we get to that point. So that's kind of where we started and where we're at. And whatever your pleasure may be, we can move through these as you'd like.
Hey, Sean, I had a question. Is it a possibility that you can be able to share your screen and then put those redlined items up for everybody to see rather than having us click back and forth, or is that?
I think so. Yeah. If I can't, I know Justin can from his desktop.
It would just be easier for us to look at least I should say, I'm not speaking for the whole group.
Sure.
I'm just speaking for myself rather than trying to go back and click everything who's ever sharing the screen.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay. So.
Does anybody else have any other comments before Sean starts?
If Justin does that, can you make them a little bit larger?
It is me trying to do this now. Can you, is that, I don't know how.
No, that's pretty good. That's
Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
As we reviewed these over the last few days, there are a couple little things, a couple little grammatical things that needed to be tweaked or changed, or not much of substance, but we didn't try to do all that. And then you with just more emails and more attachments. So they're pretty simple. We can go through these. Any catches you have or any catches we had in these amendments as we move through them and discuss them. So I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, just go ahead unless anybody else has anything else they want to ask about before he starts.
And I should also mention, I kind of introduced at two different points, Matt Slicker, who is our new planning commissioner, who will be filling out the balance of the unexpired term of Clerk Noble. So thank you, Matt, again, for your willingness to serve. Matt's got a background in civil engineering, and I don't know if I should say how many years, Matt. I don't want to date you, but you're about the same age as I am, so you're going to have to deal with it. 25 years of civil engineering experience. So we're in good hands with him joining our planning commission, and will be another addition to what is already a very fine planning commission. So that's sort of out of order, but just in case someone on the call didn't have an opportunity to know who Matt was, I wanted to at least touch on that really quickly.
And Sean, Scott will stay in as the board liaison.
Yes, I believe so. That's up to the board, and they'll usually deal with that at maybe at their next meeting, but it usually just keeps rolling along until somebody wants a change. So I haven't heard otherwise. Okay. So, and just stop me as we go. We added some definitions, as obviously we operate from day to day, certain terms and definitions end up working their way more heavily into our daily lexicon. And so when they don't exist, we rely on a dictionary definition. And, sometimes it just makes sense to plug definitions in, especially when we're going to deal with amendments that may involve that terminology. So as you can see, there's a simple definition for fleet vehicles. And I think these were drafted by Justin. Nick and Justin and maybe Jason and I all had a discussion about the definition of grade. It was previously confusing, so what's written there is meant to, hopefully clarify and simplify the definition of grade so that the average resident can understand what it is we're trying to describe.
So Sean, I just want to confirm that blue is brand new. It's not replacing anything. And then underlined is new and replacing what is crossed off.
In most cases, yes.
Okay.
I would, yeah. But in rear lot line, it's red
Oh,
and it's underlined. So anything, I think as we track changes and different people make edits, it changes the color, and I could
okay.
probably stand to be a
I
little
only
bit
have
more.
purple
Right,
and
I have
blue and
purple.
black.
Purple.
Okay, I'm colorblind, so it all looks like it's maybe red or blue to me. So
Okay.
you'll forgive
Okay,
me. For
we won't talk about any more
colors. You
colors.
don't ask about the colors anymore. So
I'm so sorry.
No, that's right.
Want to make you feel uncomfortable about your
No,
blindness.
you're fine. I've got far more issues than just colorblindness, Mary. You guys know that. But and actually, why you mentioned that, though, I will state that when I was talking to Lisa Hamami today, she was getting ready to send over the 4.1, the home occupation section, which we'll get to in a few. She was having issues with getting the colors to all match, and she wasn't pleased that they weren't kind of uniform. But I told her it wasn't a big deal. Whatever was not crossed out was going to be added or amended. So we get it cleaned up, though, for the public hearing next month.
So we'll just agree that black is existing to remain.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yes.
Okay.
Rear lot line, we kind of are going to give some flexibility to a homeowner and let them kind of select or designate their front line, because a corner lot is obviously has 2 front yards, but this kind of gives them a little bit more flexibility as to, and maybe clarity as to what their, rear lot line may be. Generally corner lots have 2 fronts, 1 rear and 1 side. It's just kind of how it is. So that's just hoping to clarify that. Add an additional definition for semi-truck, for trailer, and for truck. So I don't know, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns on any of those? Okay. So this is, we're kind of quickly moving to the, I guess, a simple amendment that's pretty straightforward, but that has caused some concern for at least one developer. This part 2 here, and we need to clarify some of the language, Chris, in that definition, but this kind of has come up on other projects where a developer comes in and they do a density plan or a parallel plan, and they're trying to determine how many lots that they would be allowed to build if they were just to go with an R1A or an R1C zoning, when they try to either do a cluster option or to do PD like Trailside did. And if you remember, there was some discussion in Trailside as to whether or not their basin could be counted as open space. And you had the ability to make a finding that it was not indeed open space. Now, I would say that rarely is a basin area able to be used as open space, practically speaking. There could be future designs or future applications that would allow for a shallow basin to maybe be used as a play field or some sort, in which case it could be considered. But this language here, where it says areas devoted to stormwater retention, detention, or other similar, and I think it should say areas of the site that are not available for the use and enjoyment of all or a portion of the residents of a site, comma, shall not be included in calculations for determining maximum density and number of lots. The reason that I think some of us felt that was the case is because, like a street or like a sidewalk, it's an element that is required in order for a project to be able to go forward. So how could we allow for a basin, which, you're not going to build your house on a basin. The lot, building lot's not going to generally include an area of the basin. So a component that requires, a component that's required for a site to function, but that isn't really usable for any other reason, how could you, I think it would be double counting it. To say that that's allowed to be part of the net area, just like the road right-of-way would be part of the net area, but then to not be able to use it for anything is sort of contradictory in my mind. And I think it's much clearer to say that a basin cannot or should not, if it can't be enjoyed by the residents for a purpose, can't be counted toward a usable area, just like the road is not open space.
Sean, do you know if this is consistent with other municipalities?
I believe it is, and Matt represents municipalities as well, and so does Chris, and they might be able to speak more to that. It's probably a good mix, though. So, and I don't want to put either one of them on the spot, but we can get to that through our discussion. Before I go further on this, Barry Stolberg, who has been a developer in the township for a number of years, sent an email objecting to this language. He sent it to Rick Kowal. He copied me, and he also copied Forrest Wall, who is with the Home Builders Association of Southeast Michigan. I know he contacted some other developers as well. He said this amendment is not fair. It is really just an automatic lowering of density, since every development is now required to have a detention or retention basin. This has nothing to do with environmental protections such as wetlands. We don't need to, in effect, lower density under the township's current density calculations, nor is it likely in 90% of the time that residents will be using a detention retention basin for recreation, because these ponds are fenced and further are usually not located in the center of a development, but on the outer edge at a low point where the stormwater naturally drains to. I guess in a way, he kind of makes my argument. While I respect his opinion and I respect his knowledge, it's really not usable for anything. So how do we give them credit for usable area as if a lot could exist on it when a lot really can't? You almost have to deduct it. And I'm not saying that should be punitive. Quite honestly, we're talking about maybe one lot in a neighborhood. I mean, and these can usually be designed around existing open space. It might be usable. I mean, there's plenty of open space that meanders through Trailside, and this happens to kind of, their basin, for example, I don't want to pick on them, bleeds off the northwest corner, but there's open space that's somewhat adjacent to that.
That could be counted.
And it could be counted. And not every basin is fenced, and not every basin can't be used. It really comes down to you being able to say, hey, look, we know what the ordinance says, but this developer is building a shallow basin that's large in area and is not designed to hold water for any period of time based on soil borings or based on the fact that there's a positive outlet that, shows that in a major rain event, it's maybe in 3 or 4 days dry again. Well, people can use that, for recreation. And so
it'd be a case by case basis.
I guess it could be. I would say that generally speaking, the goal would be to not allow it unless there could be a finding made by an applicant or by you guys that an applicant's proposal merits consideration of all or some of the stormwater basin to count toward the usable lot area or the net area that we calculate density from.
Hey, Sean, you brought up when you were talking about, and you put the word in recreational areas. Do we need to somehow put that in about recreational areas being considered as far as part of density calculation, or is it somewhere else? And I apologize if it's somewhere else in there.
I don't think we need to. We could add some, the only thing I would suggest is adding some language that says that if the design of this stormwater basin, retention or detention basin, if it can be proven that it is indeed usable for things other than just stormwater detention or retention, then the planning commission could make a finding that it can be counted. So, I mean, we don't want to be unfair, but we also know, realistically speaking, 90% of the time it can't be. And that's just kind of the way it goes.
I just didn't want all of a sudden a developer come in and saying, okay, so we've got a detention pond, and the majority of the time when it's not in use, we consider it opportunities for recreational. So then we get to the point of, well, okay, when it doesn't have water in it, then it's a recreational area. And when it does have water in it, it's a detention pond, And
I think that's why we go on to say it's not available for the use and enjoyment of all or a portion of the residents of a site, because if it is tucked into a corner or it's not easily accessible, then it's tough to really argue that it's, an element for them to use as they would any other open space. So I'm fine with it written the way it is.
Okay.
If you guys agree, then we can leave it the way it's written. If you don't agree, we can change it. If you'd like to see something in between, we can consider some language that would allow you guys to, you know, make a finding that some portion of it should be counted. But again, I mean, I don't think in most projects, I don't think you're talking about, by deducting it, I don't think you're talking about the equivalent of dozens of homes or anything like that. I think you're talking about the equivalent of a lot or two in most of the developments. Maybe Trailside, a little different. That's a bigger development, but you know, in a 50 or 60 unit development that has a positive outlet. And that's the other thing. When you're talking about stormwater detention basin, those can be much smaller in size than a retention basin. So that's where it becomes difficult on a developer. If they've got to put a retention basin in that's got to meet a higher standard because it's got no positive outlet, now suddenly the basin size maybe triples. And Matt, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you're talking about a significantly larger basin with retention compared to detention.
Yeah, they're usually twice as big, and you know,
Yeah.
those will probably never be usable. I just question, do we need to define what usable is? I mean, that can be pretty arbitrary. And then every time one of these come in, then we got to debate what that is.
Well, yeah, and it says are not available for the use and enjoyment of. So I guess maybe that's the flexibility, is that they can convince us that it is available for the use and enjoyment. I don't know.
We want to say recreational use, or we don't want to get into what kind of use? And I guess I'm a little confused about all or a portion of the residents, what that means.
I think that it can be used by everyone or most everyone. I mean, we could clear that up a little bit, but I guess if it's tucked way off in the corner, adjacent to an area that's not really physically accessible to most people. I mean,
As
maybe
you say, in most cases, it's stormwater, it's not recreation.
Right, but I guess at the same time, and I mentioned this to Barry when I talked to him, because he and I have had a running discussion, I'll call it, over the last several months about this. I said, you know, this might push some of these developers who have an opportunity here to maybe make better use of the areas they're detaining or retaining water with, and maybe design them in such a way, if they have the ability to make them more usable.
Right.
So they can be an element of the site plan that's, you know, kind of usable open space.
Most of the time, yep.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess another example, the opposite of an unusable retention area is what we had at the Preserve at Hidden Lake, which is a 6-acre pond or lake. I guess it's technically a lake, a 6-acre lake that they're using for their stormwater. I mean, they pre-treat it and they discharge their stormwater into that lake. Well, that is actually a huge element. That's one of the finest open space elements in that. It is the finest open space element in that development, and one of the best in the township. They've got their own private little lake, and they've got access to swim and fish and, you know, kayak and canoe around that thing. I mean, it's not huge, but so they've actually used that as an amenity and kind of a focal area of their open space. So, you know, that's one where quite clearly their stormwater retention detention basin was absolutely usable and able to be enjoyed by the majority of or all of the residents, because you guys had a couple of access points and almost parks created on that lake as well. So that's kind of an example of how you would make, you know, good use of a basin, you know.
So Sean, following up what Mary said, what do we gain by putting or a portion of the residents, if what you're really saying is to be open space, it needs to be available for all?
Yeah, we could just say not available for the use and enjoyment of the residents.
Right.
Does that sound better? Okay.
Yeah, because then it's like, well, one lady will use it.
Portion, right. What's a portion? Right.
Yeah.
So as far as the use and enjoyment, do we want to leave it kind of open slightly so you have some latitude?
I like use and enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying, Matt. You know, are we going to get into defining it, or are we going to leave it kind of open? Because what is use and enjoyment? And I think that might be their opportunity to say, you can make good use of it. And maybe if it's only allowed to be used seasonally, then we give them a quarter credit.
Yeah.
Because it's
I
only
think
allowed to
it
be
allows
used.
us, it allows us to be a little more flexible as far as interpretation of it,
Yep.
as opposed to being finite in defining it.
You know, and I think when the time comes for you to make your recommendation to the township board, I think that's when you have your finding, if there's a case that comes up where they really want to make use of this provision, and you just work that into your motion or your findings. So you guys agree with some of the other changes, areas devoted to stormwater retention, detention, or other similar areas of the site that are not available for the use and enjoyment of the residents of a site?
Sounds
Good.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Moving along, part 3. If you remember, the minimum floor area is sort of all over the place. Here you've got the ag district currently that says a ranch home must be 1,000 square feet, and that's a 5-acre lot minimum. And then you go to suburban farm, and it says that it has to be, I think, a 1,400 square foot minimum. And then you get into the R1As and Bs, and it's a 1,600 square foot minimum. It just seems like it's all over the place. I think people these days are trending towards smaller homes, and I don't know that we should necessarily be forcing someone who's got a 5-acre or a 1-acre lot to build any, real specific home. We've had a couple people complain that, they're downsizing and they don't want to have a big home, and our ordinance is sort of injurious in that way. It's forcing them to have to spend more money. And, I think I would agree with that. I mean, some of the new subs that come in, they have master deeds and bylaws that take care of minimum lot sizes if they want to have a certain standard for their home. So this is a non-issue for them. But Pete buys a 2-acre lot in the north end of the township and wants to build its own suburban farm, wants to build a 1,200 square foot ranch. He can't. He has to build 1,400 square feet. I don't think it's necessary. So we're going to put a uniform standard for all districts in, and it comes up later when we get into the notes for, and we can skip to it if you'd like, or we can get to it, but the notes to district standards have a kind of has the breakdown of how we would evaluate minimum, and maybe it makes sense to go to it now. So we're going to strike all the references to minimum floor area in the single family district, which is what part 3 is. And let me just zip down here really quick. And then this will take its place in the notes to district standards. The minimum floor area for a single family home shall be as follows. So ranch homes, the minimum square footage will be 1,000 square feet. 1 and also, let me try again. 1.5 story homes will be 1,250 square feet with a minimum of 850 square feet on the first floor. 2-story homes will be a minimum of 1,500 square feet with 900 square feet, a 900 square foot minimum on the first floor. And then tri or quad level homes will be a minimum of 1,500 square feet with a minimum of 460 square feet on the ground floor. So that will be for all single family residential zoning districts, regardless of minimum lot size. And again, if you buy an acreage parcel, you've got a lot of flexibility. If you live in a new neighborhood, you're not going to have this flexibility because the standards are probably going to be higher than all of this.
Right.
So you're putting these across the board in the township. Doesn't matter.
Correct. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 different numbers used throughout the different districts, and there's really it's sort of confusing. The very largest lot size and the very smallest lot size have the same, which is 1,000 currently. And then all the other lots in between have anywhere from 1,400 to 1,600 square foot minimums. It's just been in existence for a really long time. I don't know why it was that way, but it just seems like, again, with the trend going to smaller homes, this seemed to be equitable.
On the tri or quad, are you counting the below grade level?
We are going to strike that. That's actually further. There's kind of a conflicting definition. I'll just zip to it because we're right here. Part 11 used to say 1.5 of the finished habitable floor area of the story below the ground story may be included within the total minimum amount of floor area required per unit. We are striking that. The rest of it can be, we talk about habitable floor area, the rest of it can stay, but we've got to strike that last sentence so there's no conflict. So no, this would be above ground, finished space.
That's a pretty big try if you're not counting your square footage on your family room, your lower level. So you're not counting that square footage. You're saying it's got to be 1,500 square feet on the entry level and the upper level.
1,500 square feet total with a minimum of 460 square feet on the ground floor. So my hunch would be in a tri That's a good question, Debbie, because you're going to take 4 steps or 5 steps down into what would normally be, I guess, your basement.
Well, your family room in a tri, in a quad, then you go 4 more steps down to a basement.
Well, this is your area of expertise, so I would defer to you. What are your thoughts?
That seems like too high of a minimum for a tri.
Yeah, they have,
460
my son
or the
has a quad.
1500?
and They're small.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So I'm sorry, the 1500 seems very large, or the 460 seems very large?
The 1500, if you're talking about that's what I wanted to clarify. Are we talking about all 3 levels in a tri? You said no, it was, you were only counting above grade.
Well, it's just saying, yeah, it's saying below it, it says the minimum floor area per dwelling unit should not include area of basements, open unheated breezeways, open unheated porches, or attached garages or utility rooms. So the lowest level, I guess, would be your basement, your mechanical room, right? So that would not be.
Well, in a tri, your lower level is half above grade.
Yeah.
In a quad, your lowest level is below grade, all the way.
Right.
So when an appraiser looks at that, they can't count the square footage of in a quad, that lower level, but they are going to give you value. And sometimes, just like your other statement, they'll give you half value for the half above grade, that level, the tri level. Trying to describe this with my hands. You have 3 levels.
I wish I could see you. I might understand. I don't see you on my screen, but so you think the 1500 is reasonable for a quad, but it's unreasonable for a tri?
Well,
I mean, both in a tri and a quad, that 4 or 5 steps down from the main level is living space with
exactly. So it's almost
TV and the carpeting and everything.
right.
So 460 for that is not unreasonable.
Now you've got your 460 on the ground floor.
Right.
So what you're saying there is, it sounds to me like what you're saying is on the tri, you're counting only 2 levels, which would be $750 a level, basically. And so your 460 doesn't work because you have a very lopsided tri. If you didn't count your down 4-step level, a half below grade level.
Okay. How would you suggest mathematically that we fix this?
Oh boy.
I mean, just give it a shot.
I just think that 1500 for a tri is too large unless you are including, but I've seen a lot of 1300 square foot tris, 1400 square foot tris. Unless you've got to include that below grade level. And if you do, let me just get my calculator here. If you did 460 on the ground floor and you only included the ground floor and the upper floor, 1500 minus 460, I'm tired, is 1040, you would have a very lopsided house. So 460 times 3 is 1380. So you're basically saying if you're with a minimum of 460 on the ground floor, you should be able to do a 1380 square foot tri. And I don't think a quad should be much different because a quad just gives you a basement, which doesn't count your square footage anyway.
So do you think if we...
John, I just want to break in because my computer is insisting on restarting and I'll be right back.
Okay. So would you say we should drop that to like 1380 or 1400 even? Do you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, yes. I think 1500 is too large. That's my feeling.
Hey, Debbie, why do you think the lower level is not included in the calculations?
Because of what, you'd have to scroll down on the page, but where they said, it says right there, the minimum floor area per dwelling unit shall not include areas of basements, open unheated breezeways. And Sean was saying and if you have 460 on ground floor, typically your 3 levels are about equal. That gives you 1380.
So you're saying
460
though,
times 3 is
That-
4.
I agree with your calculations on that, but do most people consider the lower level to also be the basement in a tri-level?
No,
and maybe that's the case, is it doesn't.
No.
Quad, yes, but tri, no.
correct.
There you go. Yep.
So then the 1500 would be fine for a quad, but you're saying more like 1400 for a tri.
Or, well, if you're gonna say 1400, you're gonna have to make that 460 larger.
So,
I think the 13,
1250.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine, because, or we can either leave them in one category, or we can create a Roman numeral 5 and put tri in 4 and put quad in 5 and have, the current language apply to a quad and then create some smaller language for a tri. Do you want to, would you rather, if you guys have-
I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, you could have a small quad too. You just end up, because you're not counting that square footage of a basement.
So what if we drop the 460 to 450 and drop the 1500 to 1400? Does that make your math work?
Let me see.
450 times 3 is 1350.
Yeah, that math wouldn't work. You would have to go
No.
the other way.
Yeah, you went the wrong way. Right.
But you were a lawyer, not an accountant. Press sword. So yeah, so we could go to 1350 and 460, or just go to 1380 and leave it at 460. Is that what you're?
1380 divided by 3 is 460, but you have to somehow address the fact that you are going to count that the half below grade level in your square footage.
But Debbie, where is that excluded? Because if it's not a basement, I don't
Only
see the
because
basement is defined as being anything below grade.
Well, it is. That's a whole nother. Yeah, so it would be a basement if it really depends on how deep it is.
It does. You're right. I
And
can't.
so if more than half the basement wall is out of the ground, quote basement wall, then it's not a basement. If more than half of the lowest level is below the grade. So if you've got an 8-foot basement and it sticks 5 feet out of the ground, then it's not a basement, it's a story. If it sticks 3 feet out of the ground, then it's a basement, not a story. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yep.
Unless
Okay.
it's a sloped lot.
Mhm.
Well, then we do the grade averaging from the first page, the definition.
Gotcha.
Well, I guess my concern is that 1500 is too large. And if you do 460, it doesn't calculate out.
Well, then why don't we do you want to do 1380 instead of 1500, and then it calculates out to the 460?
Yeah, as long as you're including that tri area, 14.
Well, and I think the nice thing is the math lends itself to be interpreted as if we were counting it.
Right.
It
does. You're right.
That's-
Yeah,
I mean-
I think that's better.
Because again, we're gonna if they're putting, if in a try, it really depends on that basement. I don't know if we're missing an opportunity to clarify something. If anybody else wants to pipe in, maybe we're overlooking something that's obvious. It's going to cause us a headache later by not just changing this more roundly.
Justin, what do you think?
I would be in favor of maybe separating out tri and quad, and then maybe with the tri, like maximum, to have different standards for each, and that might make it clearer. And we could set different standards for each.
So leave the 15 and the 460 for the quad,
Yeah.
and then do a 1380 and 460 for the tri.
That still doesn't make sense to me, because if you are, I mean,
You would need to reduce it further for the tri to, like, I don't know, 1250 is the minimum.
That's a very small tri, but as long as if you're counting that lower level, but the the 460 and you're at 15, if you're still on the quad, you're only counting 3 levels. So basically they're the same structure. You're just putting a basement on the quad.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So maybe that's why they're looked at the same.
So I would just lower the square footage to the 1380 with the 460 on the ground floor, because if you kept it at 1500 with the 460, it's going to end up lopsided.
Okay. Or even if we want to deal with more round numbers, we could go to 1350 because we've got a 1250 and then drop the minimum square feet on the ground floor to 450 instead of 460.
I don't know, I like 1380, but
okay. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go much smaller.
Okay.
What do the other townships have as minimums on tries?
I have not looked.
Okay.
I don't know if Chris knows, maybe off the top of his head. I would be pretty impressed if he knew off the top of his head.
Actually, this is a unique one for me. Like for instance, we're together in Lion, and they don't. It doesn't specify it to this detail.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a blanket square footage for all residences. So unfortunately, I don't think I have much to add from other nearby townships.
Yeah, and I don't have any objection to going 1380 and 460. I mean, the goal that at a reasonable minimum. So dropping the 1500 down to 1380 is kind of going in the direction that, I mean, the township's not going to encourage tiny houses. We're wanting to leave their, flexibility for folks who might, not want to have a giant home. So
I can't picture someone building a tri that small on a large piece of property just because it's a very chopped up little floor plan.
Maybe a suggestion would be a minimum of 460 square feet per all levels of a tri or quad structure, where they're all the same, and that kind of achieves the same thing.
You're pretty smart, Q. I like that idea.
I think.
So you'd be then looking at, I mean, I guess that would be
I think that would work because the quad would be,
it would exclude the basement.
Right.
Right.
I think that would actually potentially be a workaround to this.
So tri or quad level, it would just say 14 square feet on all.
A minimum of 460 square feet on all levels or on any level.
So. On any level. And then clearly with the exception of the basement.
Correct.
With the exception of the basement in a quad.
Yeah.
That clarifies that we're not considering the tri to have a basement, I guess, right?
Tries don't have a basement.
Okay. Chris, are you by chance tracking all of this on your end? Because you've got the kind of the master. Yeah. Okay. So just to go through that again, tri or quad level with a minimum of 460 square feet on all levels, with the exception of the basement in a quad.
Well, yeah. I mean,
is that right?
Address the basement.
I don't even think you need to add that language because it's already excluded.
It does take care of it. I guess that would just, that would differentiate the lowest level of a quad from the lowest level of a tri. That's the only reason I mentioned that. Because if we were trying to, I don't know if it's necessary.
Yeah, it says the minimum floor plan area per dwelling unit shall not include area basements.
I don't even think we need that language.
Yeah.
You mean in Roman numeral 4?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's in the catch-all below. Okay.
Right.
I'm good with that if you guys are.
What do you think, Mary?
Let's move on.
Yep, let's move on. Thank you, Steve.
All right.
Got to go back up, though.
We got to go back up. Yep. I didn't want to jump around, but it may be necessary on occasion. So parts 4 and 5, part 4, convalescent or nursing homes in the planned development district. That's just, and I think it's something we look at as being acceptable already. And there's a lot of flexibility in the PDDs. So convalescent homes and nursing homes, we may see more of a demand for that in the township. And so we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity in a PDD, not to mention the fact that there could be a mixed residential product that has that type of living facility mixed in with some maybe senior condos or things like that. So pretty straightforward. Part 5, outdoor storage of fleet vehicles. Can I not go back up? Okay, yeah, outdoor storage of fleet vehicles. That's going to be added to the general business district. We talked about that back several months ago, maybe almost a year ago. Some of these general businesses, I'll use, for example, like a heating and cooling business. You know, they don't have semi trucks, they don't have large apparatus that they use, but they may have, you know, a handful of vans that they would use, a lighter duty van that they would use, or a plumbing contractor. And those are, you know, there's certainly an opportunity to locate those in the general business district. So it would allow through a special land use for them to store those vehicles in a screen fashion. We'll get to that later on when we get to section 4.37, but this is just plugging into section 3.1.15, the allowance for outdoor storage of fleet vehicles. It's not in this section, but I guess I should ask now about possibly allowing for this in the local business district as well. And this is where Jason Hudson has been involved a little bit. You know, he is kind of our eyes and ears out on the street. You know, I think about like a Domino's Pizza. They may have a few delivery cars. We don't generally give them a hard time. They're not really, I guess, a nuisance or anything, but I guess people could question, you know, are they allowed in a local business shopping center that has a Domino's Pizza or any delivery restaurant to park their branded vehicles out in front? I mean, if we think that that's just an acceptable use and it's not a problem, we don't have to change it.
I'd rather not see a change because they're just cars and it hasn't been a problem or a complaint
Okay.
up to now. That's just my
Sure.
personal opinion.
Yeah.
Not
And I
broke,
don't know.
fix it.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that being added in general business though? And again, it's a special land use, so you'll have some discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Part 6 is easy. It used to say C5, and we haven't used C5 since 2003. It's just catching an old grammatical error. And I think all the old grammatical errors, Justin caught. So he's an excellent proofreader. If you guys need anything proofread, just send it over to him. I'd be happy to do it.
Justin.
Part 7 is similar to part 5, I think it was. So this has to do with outdoor storage of fleet vehicles in the planned business district, which is our highest, most intense commercial district. You know, I don't know, quite honestly. I mean, we'd use some of the 4.37 standards, but we usually don't have special land uses in the planned business district because we have a development agreement. So Chris, we'll have to kind of take a look at that. I mean, we'd want to apply those standards, but you wouldn't get a special land use in the PB planned business district. Really, it would just be you know, part of the overall plan and identified in the development agreement, unless somebody objects to that. Okay. Part 8, just another grammatical. It should say an uncovered or unenclosed deck. So it's just kind of correcting that. We've already dealt with part 9. Part 10 is a small grammatical error. It should be a non-residential use abutting the RB district. So we just need to add that. We've kind of already talked about part 11. If anybody has an objection to that, let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep moving. Part 12, just adding no building or structure. So it kind of takes care of everything. Part 13, it's sort of in here as a placeholder without any changes, but that's when we kind of flip over to the other document. So I'll do that really quick.
I gotcha.
I don't know if you want me to go through the letter at all. I guess I'll just summarize really quickly. I think I might have at the beginning, but basically these are ordinances, or these amendments are being moved forward to clarify and regulate the use of, I should say, medical use of marijuana as a home occupation. For the last number of years, actually since 2008, we've kind of been looking at it as a home occupation. So if someone's a caregiver and they're licensed and they have patients, then they can grow in their home, consistent with the law, marijuana. We never sought to more thoroughly regulate it, but as you know, as things have kind of gone on, it seemed like a good idea. And this is where Jason Hudson has kind of come into contact with some homeowners, or at least landowners, that are growing marijuana in homes in neighborhoods where it's become a nuisance for whatever reason, or there are different ways it's become a nuisance. And so we felt like there was a need to further regulate this. The home occupation ordinance section of the ordinance 4.1 used to be one paragraph, and now it's 3 pages. But we strengthened the language in 4.1, as you can see here, by adding the language, any modifications to the dwelling made for the purposes of home occupation shall comply with all applicable building, electrical, and mechanical and fire safety code requirements, including all requisite permit applications and related inspections. That sort of goes without saying, but there are several things in this section that are going to go without saying, but we want to be clear about. We did strike "and family members only are permitted to be employed by such home occupations," and instead inserted "no persons other than full-time residents, other than a full-time resident residing on the premises shall be engaged in such home occupation. Non-resident persons shall not be employed." I mean, you know, who's to say that Justin and I don't tell everybody we're twin brothers and we just have different names? I mean, it's very hard to prove family membership. I mean, what does that even mean? You know, it's easy to prove that I'm a full-time resident of the home because I have a driver's license that says that I am, or I don't. So we decided to get rid of family. You know, if 2 people are cohabitating in a house and they're not related in any way, but they live there together, they run a business together, how is it any different than, you know, a brother and sister or a husband and wife or whatever? So we just thought that meant that was more reasonable language. We also added to the 4.1 section, no home occupation shall be conducted upon or from the premise which violates the township's code of ordinances, including but not limited to the township's performance standards as outlined in Chapter 14, Article 2, Section 14-25, and the township's fire prevention and protection standards as outlined in Chapter 18. So that kind of goes without saying, but we want to be very clear that they have to comply with all ordinances, not just the zoning ordinance.
Hey, John, do you want some comments now, or do you want us to wait to come back?
Whatever Mary wants. She's in charge.
It'll be hard to come back, so now's the time.
So what does, on the phrase non-resident persons shall not be employed, what does that gain us from the first sentence? And why the use of the word employed? Because employed is a significant word in the law world.
You know, I think I'd agree with you, because if you and I are in business together and I operate the business out of a home and you are remote flying all over the world, but you never show up at the house, how does anyone know? How does it bother anyone? How come you couldn't be an employee also? And, you know, we're not related. It just means that you can't engage in that home occupation at the premise. So, or premises. So I think we could strike non-resident persons shall not be employed.
I think it was just meant to emphasize the first. I think it was just meant to emphasize the first sentence.
Kind of seemed that way to me, but it may not just mean that. It's saying if you don't live there, you cannot even be employed by the business. It could be interpreted that way. I see Joe's
I agree
point.
with Joe. I think it should be struck.
Yeah. Okay. I will find that section. Yeah. Does anyone else object to just striking that? So we would strike non-resident persons shall not be employed. Okay. All right. If I talk to Lisa tomorrow and Debony tomorrow and they tell me something different, I mean, I'll communicate it to you, but I think this is fine. Okay. All right. So we covered the that last new sentence. So now we're into 4.11, medical use of marijuana. I won't read this all to you. You've hopefully had a chance to look at it. Originally, the packet had a 6.5-page version of this, and it's been significantly scaled back and simplified. The previous version had just a ton of things that were being restated from the MMMA and really were unnecessary. I know there were a couple things that Justin had pointed out. I don't know if you want to jump in here, Q, because I think this next section you had a couple.
Sure. Under A, there was just a couple of extra words at the end of the first line there. A registered primary caregiver. The MMA can be struck. Yeah.
We'll strike out that. Okay.
Yeah. And then I think the just content wise, under subsection 1 there, the intent is that we're prohibiting multiple family dwellings and non-single family homes from having a primary caregiver facility. So as such, in sentence 2, cultivation or other medical use of marijuana as a medical marijuana home occupation is limited to single family detached dwellings. We need to add the word detached after single family.
Is that legal? I mean, is that,
It is legal. Yeah.
okay. I mean, so this,
You're saying here, just to be clear for everyone, single family and then detached right here where the cursor is?
Correct.
Okay.
Can you tell me what registered means for the primary caregiver? Is that a state registration?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
so the state has said if you live in a duplex, you can't be a medical marijuana.
The state
No.
has, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The state has allowed the township or has allowed municipalities to place regulations or standards on primary caregivers. So without this ordinance, somebody could lease a space on M59, put a sign out, and be a primary caregiver. They could be up and down M59, and there could be 20 of them. There'd be no limit on them without any type of ordinance. For the past several years, and I think Jason Hudson can attest to this, that we've been telling, or the township has told people who want to be a primary caregiver that it's limited to a home occupation. So that's just been our internal policy. We haven't had an ordinance to support it, and they have been limited to detached single family dwellings. So if you live in an apartment complex, if you live in a row of townhouses, you wouldn't be able to have a primary caregiver in that building. The idea is that if I'm a property owner, or if I rent or lease a single family detached unit, I have control of that building. And then if you're permitted through the state, then you can have that use in that facility. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was a state thing or township.
And one of the things that is, and this would be a good time to jump over to the attorney's letter and just say that Michigan case law, the attorney's right, that Michigan case law authorizes a municipality to control the location of primary caregiver facilities through zoning powers and impose regulations that are not unreasonable and inconsistent with regulations established by state law. And I think that's kind of what we're using, to kind of direct us a little bit. So we have the ability to do it. We're not trying to be unreasonable about it, but I think the nuisance factor is really what comes into play when you're talking about multiple family dwellings. I mean, this is not a use that is always quiet or always odor free. And and I don't know, Jason, if you want to chime in now and kind of discuss some of the things you've maybe seen around the township, and, maybe also address the types of dwellings that you generally see this type of complaint or this type of use in.
Yeah, over the past couple of years, since the medical marijuana has been approved, been allowed, the township, myself, Jason Icangeli, and then now Justin been getting more calls regarding odor violations that we've been trying to apply the the nuisance violations too. I've been finding that, a lot of renters are buying or renting homes unbeknownst to the landowner, and they're renting the homes and doing solely medical marijuana grows. Once we find those, we contact the property owner, and they're quickly shutting them down. We certainly don't want them in apartment complexes to where they're dangerous operations to begin with. You have a lot of lighting, you have a lot of odor, a lot of electricity going through them. So the MMMA also provides that. I think it's further down in the ordinance here that restricts how many people can do it within, certain locations. You can't do it within 1,000 feet of a school, and you can't be within 500 feet of another registered primary caregiver. But like I said, as the years have went on since this has been approved, my office has been, overrun with a lot of calls on this, and I really have no legal authority to regulate them, and they're becoming a nuisance to neighbors.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I'm not sure if this is the time to ask this, but just out of curiosity, does White Lake have an ordinance that says where somebody can have a commercial grow facility? Reason I ask is I know Commerce is in their light industrial, has to be. Waterford is creating a area, and I sold a commercial building in Waterford that somebody said I could get $1 million for if it was in that commercial grow area. So I just wondered.
We've actually opted out. So marijuana establishments and facilities are not allowed in White Lake. So some of the other neighboring communities have opted in, and that's fine. That's up to them. So this would really be the extent of kind of grow operations in the township. It'd be again limited to your home and for a very select group of people. So a lot of the new establishments are for recreational use, and this is really trying to keep it more along the lines of medical marijuana use. And I don't know, as the recreational part becomes lawfully allowed, if the medical marijuana use will dwindle. I don't know how. I'm sure there are quite a few people that know a lot more about it, but it seems to me that if you can drive down the street, if any one of us can get in the car and drive to Walled Lake and buy marijuana from their parking lot legally, then the arrangement between caregivers and patients may be unnecessary going forward. I don't know. I'm not trying to be insensitive to it.
With the recreational law that passed, if a municipality had opted into allowing medical marijuana facilities, recreational facilities could co-locate at previously permitted state facilities for medical marijuana. So there would be no control. If the township had already opted into medical, then recreational would just be allowed by right to co-locate at the existing medical facilities.
I think, and that's when they start stacking their licenses too, and they begin to grow for a huge, they start to grow as kind of like a collaborative. So, and actually at the very bottom of this ordinance, you'll see we kind of get into restating the fact that, establishments and facilities are not allowed in the township, just to clarify. So as we move through here, I don't know, Justin, did you have another change or?
Yeah, under subsection X, and this was something that got dropped between the two different versions, the 6-page version and this version. There was similar language about if you don't own the property and you're renting, you have to have permission from the property owner if you're a registered primary caregiver operating in the building. So in the third line, primary caregiver must gain, the words written and notarized should be added before consent. And that was in the previous version from the homeowner, from the owner to use the dwelling for the home occupation. Then at any time, if there's an issue, the township may request, you could probably strike the word written before proof, since we've already said it's going to be written and notarized consent. The township may request proof that the primary caregiver has consent from the property owner of record. So it's just in situations where there may be renters, we can verify that they have permission by a written and notarized document that the owners allowed the use.
Can we jump up to VI 6?
Okay.
So how can we regulate the content of a sign? The Supremes kind of told us we can't, what was it, 5 years ago? And now we're regulating a sign because of its content.
It's funny you say that because this was written by our township attorney.
And I just went through helping Genoa rewrite their sign ordinance. So I'm kind of like, dang.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, because it's supposed to be content neutral. So
Yeah.
I will talk to her about this specifically.
If I may make a suggestion here, this could be struck, because if you're a registered primary caregiver with up to 5 or 6 qualifying patients, they know where they're going to get their medical marijuana. They don't need a sign out front, and there's not going to be anyone else visiting this home occupation that's not one of the registered qualifying patients. So they don't need a sign.
But this is saying they cannot have one now. And what
Right.
Joe's, I think, saying is that how do you differentiate between home occupations? I mean, that's what you're saying, isn't it, Joe? If we just didn't allow it for home occupations, then we'd be fine. But we do allow it for home occupations, just not medical marijuana ones. And I
Right.
think that's where we get in trouble.
Right.
They don't have to
They
be
wanna-
allowed to sign.
Let's see.
I don't think.
We do allow in 4.1, one non-illuminated nameplate, not more than 2 square feet in area, may be attached to the building, which shall contain only the name and occupation of the residents of the premises. So, I mean,
And-
that's a pretty basic home occupation sign. I mean,
And you might want to ask her to take a look at the City of Troy case that came out in September of this year. It's a royal pain.
okay.
They made a distinction. You can't make a distinction between on-premise and off-premise signs.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Tell me after we
Yeah,
wrote this.
clarify that for me when you said that.
The City of Troy had allowed only on-premise signs, and the Sixth Circuit in, I want to say it was September, said you can't make a distinction between the content. By saying that it could only be an on-premise sign, you're making a distinction based on content, and it was unconstitutional.
So someone could have an off-site sign advertising a registered primary caregiver?
Yuppers, you can't limit. This is what the Sixth Circuit said, is you can't make a distinction between on-premise and off-premise because it's content-based.
But if we've, what Justin was talking about, when we got registered primary caregivers, and it's 5 people, just say that number, 5 people, then what would be the reason? I understand that they can't. What would be the reason for advertising off premises?
Well, I think if we were going to say, like, and I think Joe's saying just signs in general, not just home occupation signs or marijuana related signs, but it all kind of interrelates. And so I think in this case, I think what Joe's, and I guess Joe can speak for himself, but we either have to allow home occupation signs for all home occupations that are lawful, or not allow home occupations for any sign, not allow home occupation signs for any. So it's all in or all out.
Yep.
So we'll verify that, but I kind of feel like you're probably right, Joe.
I'm not sure why a home occupation would need a sign, because we are saying it has to be an occupation that doesn't create traffic. So
Right.
you don't want to draw people in.
Right.
So, and I'm trying to think of the, a type of a home occupation where, I mean, right now I'm forced to be working from home, so I've got my office, which is full of files right here, but I don't have a sign.
Right.
So, but basically for this 6 should be removed, and everything in reference to the sign goes back to the regular home occupation sign ordinance that you just read.
Unless we want to take all signs out for all home occupations.
I think we should just leave it as is myself, and if it becomes a problem with massive signs for medical marijuana, then I just don't see it.
Some of it's a free speech thing too. If I may, whether I'm running a home occupation or not, if I go take a yard sign that has a marijuana leaf on it and go stick it in my front yard, I think
You're
I'm allowed
to do that.
I'm allowed
Yeah.
to do that.
Here's
So
thought, everybody can put up a sign now in their yard for 30 days and take it down for a day and put it back up for 30 days. Is that?
unless you live in a condo association that does not allow it.
in
And
their
believe it
own
or not, condo associations have more authority to regulate signs than municipalities.
Really?
That's pretty crazy, but I guess it's a private group rather than a governmental entity. But so if you guys don't mind, let me talk to Lisa about it.
Okay.
And then, we'll get this cleaned up and tidied up for January 7th. Because, I mean, I guess the question just becomes, and I do think I know the answer, and I agree with Joe, if we had to decide between, if there is a conflict and we can't allow one and not the other, do we want to just leave it alone? Or do we want to take it all out and not allow any signs?
I mean, for all home businesses, yeah.
Correct.
I think we should leave it the way we have it with the small, whatever that small sign thing that you read.
If that's the consensus,
I mean,
that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't think you can take the signs away from the home occupation people. I think that's an issue, be a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a guy on Newton Road for years has had a little sign that says carpet repair, carpet installation.
Yep.
I think I've called him, so I'm not gonna go to his house to get my carpet installed, but at least he's got a little sign with his phone number.
Okay.
But so then we'll take this one out of here. The 6 will.
6 will very likely come out and will very likely be out in your next draft. If for some
Once
reason
we
it's
talk,
not.
you talk to the attorney. Okay.
Yeah.
What's next?
Okay. I don't know, Justin, did you have anything else on your end? If not, I have one.
Just under D on the next page. So this article is saying that if you're a qualifying patient, it doesn't prohibit you from using or having marijuana in your home, if you're permitted by the state to be a qualifying patient. But this article or this section starts with the use of the dwelling or other permitted facility of a qualifying patient. Well, other than a dwelling as defined by this ordinance, there wouldn't be any other permitted facility. So I would strike or other permitted facility. So it would just be the use of the dwelling of a qualifying patient to cultivate medical marijuana in accordance with the state law solely for personal use shall not be considered a home occupation.
Strike
Sounds good.
or other permitted facility.
Yeah,
Right,
strike or
strike
other
that,
permitted
yeah.
facility.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, the only other thing I had was back in 11, my Roman numerals straight. I think that where it says storage occurs, I think it needs to say is subject to inspection instead of are. To ensure compliance with all applicable requirements and laws, a portion of a building or other structure such as a cultivation room where energy use and heating requirements exceed typical residential limits and chemical storage occurs. Wouldn't it be is subject to inspection?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have there. And then here are the prohibitions that we talked about. So marijuana establishments, marijuana facilities, it just clearly states that, you know, these are prohibited.
And the first one is referencing recreational. The second one's referencing medical, the updated medical in 2016. And then the third one is the original medical marijuana initiative in 2008. So any facilities under any of those three acts are all prohibited.
Matt, are you back in? I just saw that I was hosting with Rob and I saw that you were trying to get admitted. Are you back in?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
there you are. Okay.
connected there with my internet. So
Okay. All right. So that section is good. So now we're back to, let me go back to where we left off. Okay. Part 14, outdoor storage of fleet vehicles. So we talked about modifying it to allow general business and planned business. Guess I'll have to look a little closer to determine whether or not it needs to be listed here for, planned business needs to be listed here. But we go on to say on lots of 5 acres or more. I don't think that's unreasonable given some of the other standards. They've got to be kind of screened into a yard and, kind of behind a building. And then, we add storage of semi trucks and trailers are only permissible in the light manufacturing district. And then again, E, pretty obvious, but all stored vehicles must be properly registered, licensed, and operable. So we don't really want it to turn into a junkyard. Anybody have any issues with any of that?
Nope.
Nope.
All right.
No, as long as we're not, I'm just trying to think of the boarding facilities, if they have, 15 horse trailers boarded, but they're individually owned by the horse owners, but they're on the property.
The horse trailer, a fleet vehicle, Sean?
Well, it said trailers at one point.
Oh, okay.
Well, it says storage of semi trucks and trailers. Is that what you mean, Debbie?
Yeah, I don't
No,
think
on
that
the
means a horse trailer.
when you had definitions, you said horse trailers. Under
Oh.
trailer.
Oh, okay.
Go back there and look.
That's what, so I just wanted to make sure that we weren't saying a horse boarding facility couldn't allow their boarders to put their trailer on the property. I just want to make sure that's not.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is more for like commercial use rather than.
Well, I agree. I just want to make sure we're not.
Sure, yeah.
Um,
We got a lot of horses.
Well, like there's a lot of facilities that have 40, 50, 60 horses. And if you have 20, 30 trailers, they're usually individually owned, though they're not by one person.
Mm-hmm.
Horse has his own trailer.
5 acres sounds like a lot to me. Doesn't it sound like a lot? Like I'm trying to think of some businesses like family heat. Is it family heating and cooling on 59 just west of Pontiac Lake Road?
Yes.
Don't they keep a few of their trucks out there? And
They
can't
do.
be anywhere near 5 acres.
No, they probably have 1 acre.
Yeah. And that to me looks doable. I don't know. It just seems like 5 acres seems like a lot to me.
I don't know that there was any science behind it. I think we just didn't want to have, I think we wanted M59 and I don't know that it will be to turn into an area where there's just.
You don't want it to look like Amcom.
Well, right. I mean, and that was more of a light manufacturing use. And, that's one where if the building was just out front, it would have screened it. It was just the way that site was laid out where all the stuff was kind of off to the side. and they just had no more room to grow, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know that it has to be 5 acres. I don't know that I would be comfortable going down to 1.
Well, let me
Oh,
ask you,
no, one's
Sean, what,
small, I think.
yeah,
But
Sean, what happens as far as if this is in place and use that heating and cooling place, are they are cited?
No, they could pretend. I don't know how long it's been going on. I don't know if Jason, you'd consider them legal non-conforming. I know they've been in operation for a good number
They've been
of
in
years.
operation. Yeah, they've been in operation for a while, but I really wouldn't consider them legal non-conforming because I think that that business has switched hands numerous times. It was a motorcycle shop,
Yeah.
and then something else after that, and then the heating and cooling came in, and they do have their vans and back behind a screen fence, but they don't meet any of the fleet vehicle storage standards that we have now.
No, the one good thing would be, I guess, at least for them, would be at least their zoning district would allow it. I mean, they would become more conforming than they already are,
Yeah.
but just not perfectly conforming.
Correct. And I think some of these smaller companies that have, the vans and the cars or the small trucks that, they go out, they have, 4 or 5 trucks. I think they would benefit from this. And I think at least I would like to be more small business friendly that would bring them into the township and allow them to have these type of businesses in White Lake.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe do we go down to 2 acres?
Yeah, I think
Sure.
2 acres.
Yeah.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Mhm.
I mean, I think 2 acres gives them an opportunity to have room to screen them. And we're not talking about 50 vehicles. I mean, we're anticipating, a handful of vehicles with most of these uses, maybe 10. I don't know, Jason or Justin, are you guys familiar with anyone who might have more than 10 vehicles? I can't think of one.
The only one that sticks out is probably Family Heating and Cooling, because I would say they have 10 to 15 trucks or vans on their
Some of
property.
those don't stay there all the time, though. Some of them go home with their employees, don't they?
Some do, yeah. But at times that I'm assuming on the weekends and holidays that there's quite a few vans back there. I don't think it's overwhelming the property by any means, but they would probably fit within that.
Okay. So I'll go to, is everybody in the agreement with 2 acres?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Part 15. This is just cleanup. Where are we at here? So striking of G and adding A to clarify. Part 16. So our current ordinance says that a sign base must be 18 inches tall, and the total size or height of a monument sign is allowed to be 6 feet. It's kind of an awkward thing. We usually deal in 1 foot increments and dimensions. So we thought, well, let's go to a 2 foot base, which will look nicer, and then give a full 7 feet. So they'd have a 2 foot base with a 5 foot cabinet rather than a 18-inch base with a 4.5 foot cabinet on it. So the extra foot that we're looking at giving in height to monument signs will actually be half, masonry base, 6 inches of masonry base and 6 inches of sign height to make up that 7 feet, or that 7th foot, that extra foot. So we're good with that. And we don't think 7 feet will look bad, especially like on M59, passing by. Any objection?
It'll be better to plant next to something that's 2 foot tall.
Agreed.
Cover up the sign.
Yeah. Currently, swimming pools are treated like any accessory building. If it's in the rear yard, it can be 5 feet from a sideline and 5 feet from a rear line. It seemed to us that we might need a little bit more space. And that was something that Nick Spencer, the building official, had recommended that, we consider a pool to be a little bit different and require that they be 10 feet from a side lot line instead of 5. I mean, by the time you put a pool deck around a pool, I don't know that most people are going to want it to be much closer than 10. So seems pretty straightforward. And then somehow the state's building code allowed for pools to not have a fencing requirement anymore, which is absolutely horrifying to me. So if you have a retractable hard cover on your pool, you no longer have to have a fence. So I am not a pool owner, but if I was, I would never trust that, that would be sufficient to keep someone from drowning in my pool. So we are going to go beyond what the building code has reduced its standard to and require that there be a 4-foot high fence around all pools. So they can have both. They just have to at least have the fence. This would not apply to an above ground pool that's 48 inches in height, because that in of itself is a 4-foot high non-laterable fence. So per the code, this would really apply to either pools that are not 4 feet high or an in-ground pool. So any issues with any of that?
So on the automatic closers, the reason those are permitted is it's like walking on a water bed.
Yep.
And they're automatic closing. So the thought is that they are safer than having exposed water and somebody jumping over a fence like chucklehead teenagers do, late at night trying to get away with stuff. So that's the logic behind the change in the building code.
I guess what scares me is just that cover is great as long as it's always on when no one's attending the pool. That's what worries me. People are having a pool party, they run inside to get lunch, and their kids are inside, but it doesn't mean the neighbor's kid couldn't wander over who's not invited to the party and then just be waddling along and fall in the pool. Couldn't do that with a 4-foot fence that has a self-latching gate. And that's kind of what scares me. So I understand, Joe, that in concept, if it were managed perfectly, the cover, would be safer. My fear is just that, without a lifeguard on duty all the time, how do you prevent people or maybe even their pets from wandering over and falling into the pool? I don't know.
So they're being sold as automatic. The suggestion, the hint is that if people aren't using it, you have to open it, use it. If you don't, then it starts closing.
I don't
So it
know.
breaks, and then it's open all the time.
How is it automatic?
Yeah, is there a motion detector on it or something?
Haven't delved into it that closely, but I'm just letting you know that's the selling point that they make.
Well, the other thing is, I think they only will withstand 200 pounds. Well, if a few kids run out there and are standing on it, I don't know.
I wonder if property insurers will agree with this new rule.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the fence should be there, but
So I guess if someone wanted to not put a fence, they could go to the zoning board of appeals and make an argument as to why a fence wouldn't be needed. I would say good luck to them, but I just feel like this is sort of a belt and suspenders. I know the building code doesn't require a fence. I think it's a big mistake. And I think that we should raise our standards to make sure that we're addressing it. The building code used to just take care of this for us, and now that it's been removed, we have to look at adding this language if we want to have fences.
Majority of subdivisions, homeowners associations or whatever else have their own guidelines.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I had to step away, but I don't know if anybody mentioned that they have their own guidelines for pools. So, which takes care of, it has to be fenced in if it's an in-ground pool.
If it's in a homeowners association.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we have a lot of parcels that aren't, so
Hmm.
I think we definitely need to keep that in.
So there aren't too many of these that I feel strongly about, but this is one of them, but it's up to you guys.
Ben,
I don't know if my comments help, but I think this is something that's needed. You're not, those automatic closers aren't, you lose power or something happens. I would just rather err on the side of safety than, technology.
Tried and true. Yeah. Okay. Parts 18 and 19 and 20 are all just sort of cleaning up dimensions that never really lined up well over the years with amendments. So we
19's a typo.
Yes. Well, so an off-street waiting space is defined. Okay. So yeah, in 18, we're just going to go to a 9x18 instead of a 9x20, which is a better standard, I think. And then I think at one point we did have 19s. The problem is we years ago, I remember dropping this, and I think we reduced it by 10%. So we went to, I think the goal was to reduce it by 10%, and for some reason 19 instead of 18 made it into the length. So I think it was a typo, but okay.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about part 19.
Oh, yeah. But did you mean the 19 in part 19, or is there a
Nope.
typo?
No, it says 3.0.
Article 3.0.
I think it should be 5.0.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a typo.
good catch.
That's it.
Good eye.
Good catch, Pete. I didn't see that.
I'm retired. I read this morning.
Well done.
Hey, Sean.
Subsection 5.1, I think.
Okay.
Does
Yes.
the angled parking need to have 18 feet on the short side or versus just 18 feet?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you have
Yeah,
anything that, complies with the ADA as far as, you must meet ADA as far as number of accessible spaces and those dimensions, and also the van accessible space? Is that?
Those are already in existence.
So you don't need to do
That
the
just
page.
wasn't, yeah. So that is still in. Yeah, it's not here because we weren't changing that, but
Right.
Matt, you brought up an interesting question. I think we're looking at 18 on the short side, aren't we? Otherwise, if it's on the long side, it's going to be like 14 feet, depending on the angle, the degree of the angle. It could be.
Yeah, it's going to vary.
Yeah, so 45. So on the 45 and the 60, it needs to say 18 feet, and then in parentheses on the short side.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to plagiarize, but Novi's got a pretty good, they show all the angles and the dimensions with it.
Okay. So Chris, do you have that too?
Yeah, I have it. Also, I just wanted to note for you that there is an associated graphic that is directly under this table that also says 19 feet. And so I'm not sure how you guys have updated those in the past, but it will conflict if this goes in.
So we'll just need those are just, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those are just to demonstrate. Let me flip to this. So I think we can just update that graphic to reflect what the table is saying. So we'll have to get a new graphic. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's it.
You want me to show that to anyone, or so?
Just as long as it. Oh,
That's fine.
thank you.
We
I don't think
trust
we
you,
can see
Sean.
that.
Can't
Sean,
see
we
that.
trust
Okay.
you. Okay.
But I just wanted you guys to know that that we do have a graphic and a schematic, but we'll need to just update those dimensions.
Update
So that's a good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then part 20, just kind of cleaning up some of the dimensions. So you can reduce a parking space to 17 feet if a vehicle overhangs, but that sidewalk's got to be at least 7 feet. Just kind of cleaning up those standards. Part 22, it currently says the township board needs to establish the amount of a letter of credit for landscape bond. That has never and does not ever happen, nor would they want to deal with this. So it just is our office administratively doing this. It should, though, say equal to 125% of the cost to install, and the wording isn't great, but equal of 125% of the cost to install any incomplete improvements. So the of can come out. And it should say, and 100% of any installed improvements, not 10%. So we take a landscape bond for at 100% of the value, and it's just plant material. And that's just always been sort of the policy. So obviously wood chips and siding and irrigation systems, we don't take. It's just basically the plant material.
And that's effective. That's been working.
It has. Yep. And, usually people are upset at first until we say it's just a plant material. It's not your total landscaping bill, because it's ends up being significantly less. Yeah, exactly. Part 22.
Do we require sod, or are they allowed to seed?
They can seed behind the front of the building, but the front yards have to be sodded.
Okay.
In the last sentence there, that was added under the section, in the last line, the director of community development shall review the amount of that word approve should be struck, because it says guarantee for reasonableness prior to approval. So it's just an extra word there, prior to guarantee.
Yeah, good catch. Chris, did you get that one too?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one for me, Justin?
So in the last sentence there.
Right here.
Yeah.
That approved.
Yeah, that approved should be struck.
You can see that, Chris. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So part 22, we've got different sections that dance around parallel plans. We're trying to clean it up to require that a parallel plan be submitted when you're going to come in with the PD. Otherwise, how do we establish density? So that's really very straightforward and very necessary. Part 23, density calculations for residential projects. It would be all residential projects, not just multiple family, when we're trying to do density calculations. And then finally, there's a redundant first line in Article 7. So non-conforming lots of record by deleting the redundant first line. So the redundant first line is not in here, but we'll be deleting that. So that's everything. If you have any questions, we can go through any of it now, but the plan is to bring these to you in January. We'll give you a cleaned up, corrected red line version so you can see the track changes, and then we'll have a clean version with all the changes accepted too. So it'll be in both forms to look at.
Hey, Sean, can you
Yes.
go back to part 17?
Sure.
The very end of that first line, it says only behind the rear line of the home, no clothes were.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm sorry. Joe and I were exchanging emails this morning, and he mentioned that typo, and then I forgot to mention it. I had it written here and didn't mention it. So yeah, closer. It should say closer, not close were. Thank you, Rhonda.
Catch Rhonda and Joe.
Did I miss anything? Anybody have any questions? I know this has been tedious, but I appreciate it. Everyone's patience.
It's a good time to do it when we don't have anything else.
Right.
Plus, you got 13 people looking at it, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works well in this format.
True. Okay. Well, if you think of anything else, or when you read through any of it, email us and let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, so we're all done with number 8 then?
We are.
Okay, great. We have a few liaisons here. Would they like to report? Rhonda first, because I can see you, and then Debbie.
Sure, I'll go first. I'm a slacker. I did not attend the last Parks meeting because I was working. I got a new job and I don't get to pick my own hours. Actually, the meeting date was changed, so I was unable to make it. So I don't know if I know. The only thing I know new is that Stanley Park is now open, and you can go and walk around. And I'm looking forward to when my daughter comes and over the weekend to take her over there and walk around and take a peek at it. But maybe either Justin or Mary can offer any insight that might be new with parks that I might have missed at the meeting.
Well, I think that we are moving forward with getting some conceptual designs for Stanley Park with our consultant, and I think we had three kind of designs, kind of less and medium and more, and so we kind of tended towards the more end of things as a long range plan, and we'll be looking at some budgets and what phase that could be applied for us for a grant in 2021. And generally, I think it's going very well. And as you said, the park was opened. We have a slight rule change that will be corrected soon. That I didn't catch for sure, and I know that we're just going to take care of that. And that's about all. Anything else for Sean and Justin you can offer?
No, I know. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I just appreciate Mary and Rhonda and Justin, your hard work with the committee and with Beckett and Rader, and the rest of the group you're doing a great job. And I really haven't been involved like you guys have. So I appreciate all your hard work.
Say we have a few more members than we usually have.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of changes things a little bit. People are paying a little more attention to the Parks Committee. How about you, Debbie? I see you were on marathon meetings for the ZBA.
Yes. Right, Justin?
Yeah, and I am awake, everybody. So
Sure you are.
That was a long one. It was really, really long. And to be fair, we do really, I think I'm so impressed with everyone. Everyone seems to really put a lot of effort into every single case. I really think some members are saying we're being a little too lenient, and then the problem is we have all these little tiny lakefront lots that were platted in the 20s that don't meet the current ordinances. And they have a structure on them that is completely non-conforming. So it's tough. So what the two things that are popping up continuously, and I know I brought it up before, is lot coverage and the value of improvements for non-conforming. We have lot coverage issues, and the problem is we have sewers going around these lakes, and so now everybody wants to expand their homes on these little 50, 40-foot lots. And we have a 20% lot coverage, which is pretty tight when you have a little tiny lot to try to build up any kind of house where a family could live in. So that seems to come up a lot. And the 50% of the SCV on the construction costs, well, the price of lumber has doubled. So, try to build anything for. So that's where those are, I think, the two big issues are.
Wow. Well, the township is well served by, your careful consideration on these unique situations. The cottages, we used to be a vacation destination, and there weren't a lot of rules around the lakes of all the cottages that went up.
Yeah.
Back all the way back to the 20s and 30s, I think.
Oh yeah.
I think that's when Pete moved here. 20s and 30s, right, Pete?
Yeah, that was about right.
All right.
Hey, Sean.
I can't remember.
I just want to go ahead and, since both Mary and Debbie and Rhonda are providing their reports, I'd just like to go on record if Scott cannot be at the meetings to give his report from the standpoint of the township, then he needs to provide us a written report.
I could definitely ask him for that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the importance part of having a liaison to us is to be able to have communication of what happened in the board meeting. And we haven't been getting that.
I will pass that along.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Sean, are you or Justin able to, or anyone who's been following the board meetings, is there any kind of even hearsay report from the board meetings that you could give us?
Well, we haven't had a lot of our items that have gone to the
Oh, you
board.
haven't gone either.
Yeah, so I mean, they've done a lot of, they've dealt with special assessment districts, and they've dealt with a lot of contracts with the various unions at the township. I know they had to take some action on some, I think, Open Meetings Act type stuff to allow remote meetings to continue. Trying to think what else. Well, we appointed and reappointed members to committees. Trying to think what else. Justin, you actually tuned into the one on Tuesday. Is there anything else that was really exciting that that was missed?
No,
On the spot.
no, I think the water department had their SCADA for the sanitary sewer stations. I think they're going to be upgrading that. So I think that got approval. A lot of SAD stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of utility work. I think there's a big sewer SAD going in the area of Sugden Lake, and that's moving ahead. So
Yes, I
But,
know about that.
yeah.
Okay. How about our planning consultant? Any other reports from our planning consultant here tonight?
I didn't ask him to prepare one in
Oh,
fairness
okay.
to him.
It's just on the agenda, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the director's report.
I'll just briefly, I mean, you guys kind of know what's going on. I mentioned already in the ordinance amendment discussion that, you know, how we'll be moving forward. So the next step will be on January 7th. We'll have a public hearing on the amendments that we've discussed tonight. And then I'll just briefly say there are a couple projects out there. Eagles Landing, which is preparing their final site plan approval, as well as West Valley and Lake Point. And so I think you'll probably be seeing those projects, if not in January, probably in February. I know they're, you know, eager to start moving ahead. I think everybody kind of held on going to this fall with all the political stuff going on and all the virus stuff and the uncertainty with the economy. And I hope that things are going to start calming down everywhere for everyone, and people will start kind of tiptoeing ahead. I will say though that the home builders that have open sites, Preserve at Hidden Lakes and Trailside, they're going gangbusters. And I think Cedar Meadows over off of Cedar Island Road is, I think I exchanged emails with the developer, and he's only got a few, maybe 4 or 5 more houses to build or finish up over there. So the sites that are open are doing well. So I'm very happy to hear that. Four Corners is another one where, you know, it took a while to get to a point where it really started looking good, but, you know, the colors are coming together. You know, we had been asking them to go out and seal coat the block, the burnished block, to darken it up a little bit, because it was very light, almost like a cinder block, concrete cinder block looking color to it. But when they power washed it, it darkened it up quite a bit. And then they did put a sealant on the block, which darkened it up further. So it's looking just like the color scheme that they had proposed back initially. So they're making pretty good progress. Actually, the 3rd floor of the west building, which is the one closest to Union Lake Road, their kitchen's going in on that 3rd floor. So they're getting close. They're hopeful that by March or maybe April, they'll be able to move people into that 3rd floor. They've got a lot of work to do still, but that is their hope. So mostly good things to report. So we're happy about that. And that's really all I have.
Hey, Sean, you know, the situation about, and please forgive me because I can't remember, the car wash that's on 59 that they backed out.
Yes.
Did you mention that somebody else was looking at that area or what?
Yes, there was another user who was considering potentially a car wash, but I have not heard from them recently. They were going to kind of be getting back to us. They're doing some due diligence right now.
Okay.
Is there anything, have you heard anything about general RV Is anything?
No, that one, we had a supplier, building supplier, actually a shingles supplier that thought they were going to locate there, and that kind of fell apart in the 11th hour. Back several years ago, without any kind of permit or approval, General RV filled half of that detention basin in and started parking RVs on it. Yeah, and there was a lot of flooding associated with that. And then they kind of moved out, and we looked at some aerials and thought, the basin is a lot smaller than we remember it. And it's just because they went ahead and filled it in. So in dealing with interested parties, it kept surfacing that there was an issue with the basin. So to General RV's credit, they hired an engineer to do a design on kind of reconstructing the basin. And then they hired a contractor to carry that out. And I haven't been out there on site. It was just something administrative, and they should be, I would assume, wrapping up that basin project here pretty soon. So that will hopefully allow there to be a good reuse of that property, because that was kind of an Achilles heel for it, is that someone was gonna have to come in and spend quite a bit of time and money fixing that. And so that's being taken care of. So
Okay.
yeah,
Else?
it's always interesting.
Stuff happening.
Yeah, Jason Hudson has probably one of the more interesting jobs at the township. So something different every day. That's all I have. Yeah, it's amazing. He had, just a chestnut head of brown hair when he first started, and now look at him.
Just 5 short years ago.
That's right. He's only 23.
I do want to say throughout the township, you're going to see some buildings, or have seen some buildings come down, some dilapidated buildings. And excuse me, and that's a lot of help to Sherry Barber during all this. So the buildings at Pontiac Lake Road, the old trailer park, those were taken down. They were a huge eyesore and just a nuisance for people breaking into. Mr. Ron's will be coming down hopefully shortly. They've started somewhat of a demolition on it. The contractor they hired is a slow work, but he is plugging away at it. So hopefully within the next 30 days, we'll see that building come down.
Great. Thanks for everything that you do. We
Thank you.
don't see your face here very often, but come back anytime and bring your cute dog.
Well, I'll try to make more of them.
You didn't have to speed to get home in time to join us, did you? Because I appreciate you
No.
hustling back I figured you kept it at 10 and 2 and 5 under, right?
10 and 2, 55, stay alive.
Perfect.
Right. The next item is for the calendar for next year, and I guess you need us to look at those and make a motion. Is that right?
Yes, please. I can put that up if anybody wants me to. But
Till the first and third Thursday.
First and third Thursday still. I don't know that anything bumps up drastically against any holidays. And that's all, July 1st, but I'm always kind of looking for those.
Probably
4th of
maybe
July.
Labor Day you might be bumping, but that's a Thursday.
Yeah, you're right. It would be Thursday before Labor Day weekend. So, we
Most
usually,
people-
if we hear back, we usually do a kind of a call for quorum. So,
Yeah, if there's a problem.
yeah.
Motion to approve?
By Pete. Steve to second. All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
And you mentioned several times the next meeting dates on January 7th and then also the 21st. I want to welcome Matt here. He comes from my previous life about 6 years ago. When HRC was one of our consultants where I worked. And I do understand that Dan Mitchell also was a White Lake Township resident. Is that still true, Matt?
Yes.
Yeah, so, if you have another vacant slot, that's another person that has 4 kids, so he has plenty of time on his hands to
Yeah.
volunteer.
All right. I'll make sure I get that down.
I guess we're at adjournment, and then we're going to be okay with Sherry because it's 8:55.
Oh, thank God.
So much for
Fantastic.
that 8 o'clock thing.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, everybody
Second.
did it at once.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Y'all have a Merry
Hey, guys.
Christmas.
Merry
and a Happy
Christmas
New
to all of
Year.
you guys.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
meeting.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
And thanks
Bye.
again to Rob for running the show behind the scenes.
My
there.
pleasure. Thank you,
And
Thank
everyone.
you. And thank you,
Thanks to
Mary.
Mary for going ahead and running the meeting.
Oh, this
Take
was
care.
an
Thanks, Debbie,
easier
for
one
doing
than
2 meetings
some.
in a row.
If there were a bunch of pitchforks here, Steve, I'd put you right there.
Whoa.
We'll let we'll let Mark know that you did an excellent job in his absence.
I
And actually,
suppose he's
election of off.
someplace warm and sunny. And
He didn't
maybe
say,
Also,
but,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.